I'd like to call this meeting council to order. First item is the adoption of the agenda. I have a late item to be added to the adoption of the agenda. It's in regards item 12A. It's in regards to the property at 7217 Riverside Drive. May I have a mover for the amendment? Councillor Butler, seconder Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. So now may I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda as presented. Councillor Butler, seconder. Seconded. Councillor Crowd. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Moving on to the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment? My computer just crashed. It's needing to restart. So may I borrow someone's agenda for just a moment? A hard copy?
Here you go.
Thank you, Vera. I'll give it back when my computer gets going. Thank you.
Would you like mine?
Yeah. You're okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Don't get to it's just starting.
Can we have a motion to adopt the January 15, 2018 special to go in camera meeting minutes as presented? Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Hammett. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. 3B. I have a motion to adopt the January 15, 2018 regular meeting minutes as presented. Mover, please. Councillor Tripp. Seconder, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Moving on to the item 4A, which is the registered petitions and delegations, subject matter, Whisper of Hope BETHS report presentation. At the January 15, 2018 regular meeting, Council adopted a resolution to extend the time in which BETHS and Whispers of Hope remain in their location until March 31st, 2018, contingent on that the electrical repairs on the building are in compliance, the cooking appliance exhaust hood and ventilation system are cleaned by January 29th. Reports on the building and proof of insurance need to be available for the regular meeting of January 29, 2018. The recommendations that Council receives the information from Whispers of Hope and BETHS and determines if the organizations have met the requirements as resolved by Council at the January 15, 2018 regular meeting. Mover, please. Councillor Tripp, Councillor Butler. Any discussion? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that I've seen the insurance from BETHS that added the city as an additional insured.
Whispers.
Was Whispers there too?
Yeah, it got emailed to us earlier in the week.
Okay. Okay, I must have missed that. That came through Melissa?
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? So carried. No unfinished business. Moving on to reports. Written reports of council. Recommendation all written reports of council submitted to the January 29th regular meeting be received. Mover, please. Councillor Tripp, seconder. Councillor Thompson. Discussion. Councillor Butler.
I just had a couple questions for you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Thompson from her report. At the beginning there, you're talking about the Chamber of Commerce meetings and that the new FM representative would be attending. Is he appointed as a board member, or is the Chamber now having open meetings for their?
It was a general meeting and he is appointed.
Oh, he's a new board member?
Yeah.
Okay. The other question, I don't know if you had a chance during the break to find out anything about the Phoenix Foundation's grant meeting that they had.
Yes, they did. They did have one last week. However, they will be having one on the 21st of September in the big meeting room, or February.
Okay.
Wishful thinking. In the Selkirk meeting room, and the Vancouver Foundation is going to be there. And so that's open to the public, and you're certainly welcome to attend that.
And that'll be advertised in the paper? I guess?
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, okay, great.
As soon as I get the time confirmed, I'll just email it out to everybody.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? So carried. Moving on to the next item, which is the verbal report from the RDKB rep, which would be myself. And there is nothing this time to report, so the recommendation is that Mayor Conrad's report on the activities of the Regional District Kootenai boundary be given verbally at this meeting be received, but there is none. So we'll move on to our next item, which is recommendations from staff for decision. Item 8A, the introduction of development permit for contractor shop at 8168 Donaldson Drive, Development Engineering Service. The recommendation is that council receives a report on the development permit application for a contractor shop to be located at 8168 Donaldson Drive, legally described as Lot 8, Block 14, DL 520 SDYD, Plan 1339, and refers the decision on the development permit to the February 13th regular meeting of council. Councillor Butler, seconder. Councillor Tripp. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. 8B, subject matter, British Columbia Conservation Foundation, known as the BCCF, WildSafeBC program for 2018, Department of Engineering and Development. Recommendation to council supports staff submitting the grant application for a WildSafeBC community coordinator for the 2018 season and commits $8,500 from the wildlife management budget to match and supplement grant funding. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Tripp. Discussion, Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This has come before council every year now that I've been on council, and I've seen the program rolled out, and they do a great job of educating the public and putting up signs around town when we have fairs. But we do have a lot of requests this year for grant and aid. We've got a lot of great programs asking for money, and although they're all good programs, they all add up and add to tax increases. So this one I've always been kind of on the fence, and I think because we do have other great programs that I want to fund this year, I would like to maybe cut out a few of the programs that I think are more, not so much of a necessity, but more of a want. So I'm not going to be voting for it this year.
Is there any other discussion? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, through you to our CEO. This is matching money, is it not? That that we're not paying the dollars connect to that.
I just refer it to.
Okay. I believe it is matching money, and it's something that we apply for.
Yeah, it's a grant opportunity with BCCF. Each year when we apply, they don't actually know what their budget's going to be yet. And so they may not get the money, so if they don't get the funding, then I would bring it back to council and then make a decision on whether or not to continue with the program. So this is just our contribution. Their funding level can go up or down depending on what they get each year. So this would just be to put the grant application in, but if something changed with the funding and they let us know, then I would bring it back to council to make a decision.
So is their grant funding matching the 85 or more, or is it less?
Sheets from last year. The previous years, I believe their contribution was around, I think it was around 13,000. And ours was 85 last year. There was a bit of a reduction because they didn't get the full amount. So what happened was the program was shortened. So it's the program can maybe only go for 2 months or 3 months depending on their funding level. So this is for a 6-month position. It can be a 6-month full time, but generally it's done over an 8-month period depending on the client or the person that gets the position. So it's a fairly flexible position, and again the funding is kind of flexible as well, and it just depends on the funding level that they get each year.
Councillor Emmett.
Yeah, I'm a little confused because in the paragraph it says partnering organizations such as the city contribute a minimum of $3,000 towards the program delivery costs, and the BCCF provides $8,523 that is allocated toward wages for the community coordinator to work part-time. So is that 11,523 altogether? Is that, like, it says we contribute a minimum of $3,000. So if we were to contribute $3,000 and they provide 85, it still gives them 11,000.
Their funding, that's their support. There's a cash support, and then there's a training. They do all the training, they do all the hiring, they provide all the materials, so there's also an in-kind portion. This is what we've done in the past to do a wage top-up. So it's very difficult to get people in this area to take this job on, being that it's only part-time. And their base wage, I think, is around $14 an hour. So council has agreed to a top-up wage, which this covers mostly the top-up wage, and it helps to get a person who's a bit more qualified, and it tends to draw people to the position. They found in smaller communities like this that it can be very difficult to attract a person to these positions.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. I was wondering, my question was going to be about that $3,000 as well. I think I would be willing, and we do have, and we talked about it this afternoon in our budgeting process, that we do have well over $50,000 this year of requests that are coming in that are new, in addition to what we've had in the past. So I would be willing to maybe go for the $3,000 mark, if that's the minimum, and we can go with that. I'd be willing to maybe go with the 3,000 and not be the full 85, if that was agreeable to other councillors.
Councillor Thompson.
I appreciate what the councillors are saying with regard to budget items, but to me, this is a safety issue for our community, and I would not like to see our community shortchanged if there are bears and other species of wildlife, dangerous wildlife, that are inhabiting our community. So I would support the $8,500. It's a grant application that we're authorizing our management to submit, and it can come back to council when our team knows whether or not we've been successful and to what degree.
Councillor Butler and then Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, just to clarify, they're not actually removing bears from our area. We still have bears in our area. People know not to put their garbage out, but people still put their garbage out. I mean, we've been educated now for years on this, that you keep your garbage inside until the day that you put it out, and that there will be bears in our area come fall time when there's fruit on the trees, you need to pick your fruit trees. So I still see bears in my neighborhood, and I still have them every year despite this program. This program isn't stopping the danger of bears. All it is telling us that they're there, which I think most of us are already aware of.
Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on this because, you know, we are, those of us that have been here for a while, are aware of the danger animals that we have and treat them with respect that they deserve, and know when to watch for what. But there are a lot of new, as we saw today, they're planning on new building applications. So we have a lot of new people that have moved into the community that may not be aware. I think the Bear Aware program is probably one of the most vital parts of this, is educating people about the wildlife that comes through this border. But at the same time, this could be something that we could look at through our own communications channels to publicly promote Bear Aware messages through our media and on our Facebook page and on our website to educate people. You know, we could go out as a reminder maybe on hydro books just to let people know, because it could be, you know, notice on there say, please, you know, be cautious. One thing that they did do is they went around and they posted signs where there were bear sightings You know, but I mean, they are everywhere. We have them at our place all the time. Anybody that goes down there knows that's where they live. I know the previous wildlife coordinator did a lot of workshops with school kids, a lot of education programs with the younger kids, and she talked about everything from rattlesnakes, which are also a hazard in the summertime, to deer, to cougar, to all the animals that live in our area, and educated school kids, as well as going door to door and knocking on doors and letting people know about not feeding the deer and the bear problems. So I'm kind of torn on this, whether it's something that we can communicate to the public, as long as we have the resources to do that and we have the manpower to do that. It could cost us less. So, I don't know, it's a valuable tool that if it's subsidized, so.
I'd just like to speak to this, make council aware of, if I understand the recommendation, it is only to support staff submitting the grant application at this point in time, and then to commit the $8,500 to match the supplement grant funding. So if I understand this correctly, if the grant funding does not come in, we're not committed to the $8,500, am I correct? So right now, all we are doing with this resolution is to support you to apply for the grant funding, correct? Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
Well, I just was going to make that point, Mayor Conrad, but it does say and commits $8,500.
To match, if you read the last few words.
Yes, to match and supplement
Yeah, so if
grant
there's
funding.
no grant funding, we're not going to be matching.
Okay, but I would not be willing to commit $8,500.
Exactly.
I would be willing to commit to up to $3,000 from the wildlife management budget to match or to supplement the grant funding.
But it will come back to council again because it's contingent on the grant funding.
Well, I would like to see that recommendation changed or a further resolution or something to put in there that we're doing a maximum of $3,000. That would be my ask.
Councillor Crowley, you
I'll second that if you're putting that forward as an amendment.
Sure.
want to amend it?
Okay, so then it would say, resolve the council supports staff submitting the grant application for WildSafe Community Coordinator for the 2018 season and commits up to $3,000 from the wildlife management budget to supplement grant funding,
Contingent on grant funding.
contingent on grant funding.
And that's what the numbers on there say.
Okay,
Is council?
Me?
Yeah, go ahead. Councillor.
we're discussing the amendment, so I'll just make what I was gonna say from the original one match the amendment, okay? Because I never got to speak, but anyways. Yeah, the wild safe or wildlife coordinator, bear aware, even though most people know that they're not supposed to put their garbage out, there are people that don't get it. You never know, maybe this year they do, right? I can't support the 3,000 because I think we should be applying for the larger amount. And you should see the amount of traffic they get at their booth when they have it set up at the farmer's market and stuff, right? When they're out in the community actually doing it, talking to the school kids and stuff like that. So I think it's valuable. I think we're doing our part. Some people will never get it and never change. They'll feed the deer, they'll leave their garbage for the bears. But the younger people may not know, new people may not know. So I think it's good bang for the buck. So I won't support the amendment.
And that's why I feel the monetary amount, basing it on a 3,000 level, should actually be based contingent on what the grant funding will come back as. So in other words, don't put a monetary amount of 3,000 on this, just make the 8,500 contingent on the grant amount that we're getting. And this is why I feel like...
And then it's coming back
exactly.
for a final decision.
Exactly. Anyway, I'm going to call the question. Unless there's any discussion, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? The amendment failed. So would you like to make an amendment to the resolution stating that contingent on
Yes,
until any funds are committed?
Yeah.
Something on that nature?
yeah.
Okay. Do I have a
They can
second?
figure it out.
Yeah. I'm sure the recorder can put that one down and,
I thought that's what it said already, but.
Not
well, to match, it just says to
Yeah,
match,
it
but
says
not
to match.
contingent. And then it comes back to council for decision again.
I thought this only came before us once. I didn't think it would, usually it only comes before us once.
No, because our manager of development engineering said that it would come back to council. Did I not understand that correctly?
We have to see if we get pushed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up until last year, we had gotten full funding every year. Last year was a bit different.
Yeah.
So I thought for sure if we get to find out what's funding office
Okay. So, may I have a mover on that amendment? Well, we already do a seconder on the amendment, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor of the amendment? Anyone opposed? Councillor Tripp. Motion carried. Now,
Or did you vote?
That doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah.
gonna vote against the main motion, so it doesn't matter.
so now may I have a mover on the amended motion as
Your
presented?
motion is amended, and I think we already have that.
Yeah, so we'll get, okay. Done. Moving on. There's no requests arising from correspondence.
Yeah.
Did we not vote? I thought we did.
We
Just
have to vote on the motion as amended.
Yeah, that's what I just asked.
That's what we
On
need
the
to do
amended
now.
motion.
Well, first you have to vote on the amendment.
We
and then
just
you-
did. And you,
Okay.
Councillor Tripp opposed it. And the
Right.
rest voted.
Yeah,
And now you're gonna
and
vote
now
on
we
the.
vote
On the amended motion, that's what I asked. So may I have a mover? Councillor Crog,
okay.
seconder, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Councillor Butler and Councillor Tripp are opposed. All right, motion carried. Moving on to 10A, which is information items, customer service enhancement, phone system, corporate services / IT. Recommendation is that council receives for information a memorandum from corporate services IT regarding the phone system customer service enhancement. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Butler. Discussion. Councillor Thompson.
Is this one of those answering services, if you want to talk to so-and-so, press 1, if you want, whatever?
There.
Fill us in.
We've recently changed our phone, so please pay attention. That's what they always say. It's
So-
a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The idea is to basically leave it as is, but like there's tax time seasons where the phone just rings nonstop, or we ran into that problem over Christmas as well at one point. The phone rings nonstop, nobody actually picks up the phone, and there's no answering machine ever coming on. So now we've set it up so after like, I think it's 6 or 7 rings right now, that the system kicks on to at least answer. And yes, it does come up then and say, if you know the extension of the party you wish to call, press enter it now, or here's the emergency lines, or press 0 if you want to leave a message at reception. So the idea is that staff then, there's 3 ladies in the front, they all will check a virtual voicemail box in our email system where it actually gets delivered. So it might even be faster service, because if the front counter has 2 ladies busy, third lady can check the voicemails and return calls, or at least delegate where the call needs to go in the first place.
So it's not a truly automated system.
We could make it automated if council wants to. Go down there.
We're horrible.
Sorry, his number is no longer in service. All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor to receive? Anyone opposed? So carried. 10B, Q4 Financial Summary Report, Boundary Country Regional Chamber of Commerce. Recommendation is that council receives for information the Boundary Country Regional Chamber of Commerce Q4 Financial Summary Report. Move it, please, Councillor Thompson. Seconder, Councillor Crog. Discussion, Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to have to speak against this motion after we discussed in our budget workshop this afternoon. The budget that has been presented to us tonight is not the adopted budget that was presented to us last May. Not only have the line items been changed, but the actual content of the financials themselves have been changed. And when we met with the chamber earlier in the fall, I think it was at the end of September, they said their reason for not bringing their budget forward at that time was because they hadn't been able to have a meeting yet to finalize their budget. But when I asked how their budget got changed today, they said that they held a meeting via email in order to get the budget. But then they said they hadn't had a meeting last time they were here, so I find that really confusing. Not to mention that they were planning on running a $19,000 deficit and it came in at a $30,000 deficit. So they said that their membership is up. They already had 75.
Councillor, you can't state what they said, that's hearsay. They're not here to talk about themselves, they have to represent themselves.
Oh, well, it's
hearsay.
it's written in the financials that I have.
No, but you would state what they had said, that's hearsay.
Oh, in the previous meeting, okay,
You can't
that's
state
fine.
what they had said, sorry.
Okay, that's fine, but I'll just have to vote against this because I see a lot of inconsistencies.
I understand the data you're presenting, that's fine, but when you
Yeah.
mention that they had said today, that's hearsay, you can't use that. Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, I'm going to support the request for 15,000, which is 5,000 less than what they
We're
had
just
been
receiving.
getting before. And I'll accept, I'm going to accept to receive this too. And I think the way that it was explained today, the budget and the financial statements makes perfect sense because they were prepared prior to the new executive director and no records were left behind for her, so she didn't have the old ones to fall back on.
Is that hearsay?
Yeah.
Well,
You're explaining their statements, which they're not here to corroborate.
Oh, I accept what they were here today to explain and I accept their explanation. And I think that it's worth our investment to continue to fund them.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. As council liaison to the chamber, the document that was circulated previously that Councillor Butler has referred to is a line item report off of an accounting system. I think they used QuickBooks. I have used Sage Accounting and similar. And what I heard from the chamber executive director,
It's hearsay, apparently we're not allowed to say it.
but as a liaison, I think I did report, I could report, is that she is very, very experienced in working with nonprofits and in preparing these kinds of budgets. And for reasons under the BC Chamber of Commerce and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the budget that was presented in the document that we're receiving tonight was prepared in accordance with the rules and regulations under those organizations. And so I don't have an issue with accepting the report as presented. And I think that to not accept it because it doesn't agree with the printout that you had before. It's unfortunate that the previous executive director was not familiar with the requirements under the other two acts that are the governing organizations of local chambers of commerce. So that's my comments.
I think council should focus mainly on the documentation and the data we have in front of us and base our decisions and our choice on that, other than other documents that have no verification or any potential that they actually are legitimate documents. So, Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, I will be voting to receive this for information. When we get to the budgeting process where we're looking at the fee-for-service that the City of Grand Forks will provide, that will be a different matter. However, my concern is for any organization that we are funding, if we're looking, and I know we've had some explanation, but when an organization comes to us with a $30,000 deficiency, and most of that is going into office administration and travel, which would be basically for staff. I think what we're hoping to see when people bring us information, when they bring us our income and their income and expense statements is that we're looking at something that is a fiscally responsible organization. And I'm questioning that when I see a $31,000 deficit for this budget.
There's an element now that I will concur. That's a good, just looking at the data and the logic there is there. I understand that. Councillor Butler?
The other concern that I had, and Councillor Thompson brought it up, is that an executive director does not have the authority to change a budget. That's the board's decision, it's not a staff decision. And for that decision to have been made by the executive director without a board meeting, I find quite concerning that the board isn't running the show.
Councillor Thompson?
The difference between the budget that you referred to and the budget that was presented is a variance of $700. The executive director did not change the budget itself, per se. What she changed was the presentation format. And that was
I
done
beg to differ.
in accordance with the BC chambers and the Canadian chambers. And that you can't accept that, that's up to you.
Okay, Councillor Butler, I will give you one more kick at the bucket. And that's
Well,
it.
it's easy to see when you look at the line answers, or the line item for fundraising. It's been completely removed. They had set a standard for $5,000 to be raised from fundraising this year. This new budget that was adopted sometime at the end of the year, which doesn't make sense for a budget to change it at the end of the year to make it say what you want it to say. You can't just remove that arbitrarily from the budget. Fundraising was set at $5,000. Now they're saying they didn't actually want to fundraise, and she said, well, I won't say because the mayor says I'm not allowed to say what they said this afternoon, but you can't change your budget like that without having a meeting. And that's what was presented to council. We received a budget request to fund them for $15,000 based on the budget they gave us. They have now not met that budget, and they have misrepresented that budget to us.
Councillor Hammett?
Yeah, I had some serious concerns last year about the chamber. I have had for a couple of years. And, you know, to see it going downhill, it went, you know, the membership was cut in half. It declined by almost 50% or more in the 2 years. When the new executive director was hired in June, and now it is back up and it's doubled. We knew that when the changeover happened with the executive director, that it was going to be a struggle. I was prepared then to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I trust Kendra's abilities to be able to turn it around, and I still do, and I would support it. And I think that in spite of the fact that there was a deficit, that deficit was presented to us by the old board with the old executive director, and what they're trying to do is dig their way out of a bad situation and make it better, and I think they need our support and they need our help, and I think we should encourage them because we need our business community.
That's 4.
You can cut it off if you want. I was just going to say that membership dues they had, as of the end of April, they had $7,500 in membership dues, and they raised another $4,236 by year's end, so that's certainly not doubling.
Unless other councillors feel the same concerns, I guess one element that could be taken here is have BCRC present themselves in front of council, because today we won't get into the discussion that occurred, but was not the time and the place to actually analyze the reasoning why, because it wasn't a decision-making scenario. So I believe if we feel uncomfortable, then we can defer this and have them present themselves in a proper format, and then it can be discussed if council has an appetite for that.
Are we just receiving this for information?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there can be, yeah, exactly, it's just for information, but I'm just saying that there's that option that if certain councillors feel a bit concerned or about the issues, well then we can pass them over and come forward if such a request is required, if you have an appetite for that. Councillor Crog.
Should I make a separate motion or just try and amend this one?
Oh,
For
just
receive for information and request a presentation from BRCC.
Yeah. That would be my
Yeah.
recommendation.
I was-
Would you feel comfortable with that? Okay.
Second.
All right.
Well,
So
the
we got a motion on the table to receive for information. Let's
Yeah.
deal with that one first, councillors, and we had enough discussion on that one. So all in favor to receive? Anyone opposed? Councillor Butler. Okay, that motion's passed. Now Councillor Crowley has a motion on the table. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Tripp seconded. So all
What is
those.
that motion?
Can you-
To have them present.
When?
As soon as possible.
Next, I guess,
Yeah,
committee
yeah.
of the whole.
Next committee of the whole.
Maybe that's not a proper formatting.
Your worship, I'm not sure
Oh.
exactly how many delegations we have. We already have 3. And so,
Okay.
I guess council also has to realize that they've already provided presentations to council and the information. We have budget deliberations that have to be done in a time sense, and so it may not be a very good timely piece for them to come and accept, unless they want to have a 4th delegation.
We've had some marathon meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just the fact that there are certain concerns amongst council so that they have a chance to explain themselves, and we were in that process starting it, but it never got concluded. So myself, I would like to hear the results too.
Well, you know, I thought that they answered all of our questions very adequately this afternoon. It's unfortunate more of the public weren't here to hear that. But I just feel that we are belaboring a very small issue. In $5,000 or whatever that council members can't visually see on the document that was presented. I don't believe that the Chamber of Commerce is trying to be nefarious in their requests. I know that what I was advised when I was at their meeting was that, yes, there had been some minor changes and amendments to their budget, and that it had been done through email, which is not unusual in some organizations, where an email is sent out by the executive director requesting that a member of their board make a motion to amend the budget to reflect A, B, and C or whatever, and a second director to second it, and then to have all of the executive director then send out, I believe she would send out a second email saying that director so-and-so moved and director so-and-so seconded that, we resolved that, whatever, and then the board votes on it.
You did email by proxy.
Email by proxy, and that has been done in this particular instance. So I think just to ask people to come back and present on something that they've already presented on for whatever purpose, I think that's an abuse, and I can't support that.
That's right.
The only thing I would change is in today's financial, and the budget presentation, it had them as a fee-for-service agreement for $20,000. I would just change that back to 15 because I think it had been submitted in error originally for 20,000, then it was amended to 15, but it didn't reflect on the budget, on the financial state, on our budget. So if we just change it in our records.
Okay. Would you be able to do that?
Yes, your worship, in fact, what we had in writing was 20, but I remember, and there was, if you check back into the meeting, that the request was actually for 15
Yeah,
grand.
we did 15
So,
and 5.
that's what our chief financial officer will be doing, is actually changing the budget request to $15,000.
Yeah, because again, the response, Councillor Thompson, and your liaison, I agree. but I can't comment on the response because again, like I myself said, that would be hearsay, but I accept it because if it's a format change, there would be no reason why the executive director would make a statement based on the format change because she's obligated by law to do it that way. But the numbers all add up, do they
No,
not?
they don't.
Well, there's $700 difference.
They've removed their fundraising budget, and they've also changed the deficit that they were planning on running.
It's a $700 difference, but she didn't see the last budget.
I'm
Councillor
sure
Tripp,
she's seen it, I've
that's-
seen it.
No, she asked for it and it was never.
never gave it to her.
Given it to her.
And she wasn't left with
There was nothing in the,
Maybe it's
Okay,
in
so are
order,
we-
you can keep
are we
copies.
Thank you, Mayor Conard. Well, as I recall, when the organizations were coming forward and asking for the money that we were going to be giving them, the fee for service, they came and they presented their budget, and they came as a delegation, and they did the whole thing. The reason why we're now dealing with this after the fact in 2018 and not in 2017 to be put forward correctly into the budget is because they hadn't had meetings, they didn't have anything together, and so now they're slipping a piece of paper in. I sort of feel, that they haven't gone through the proper process, and I would personally like to see them come, just like the rest of them had to come. All of the other organizations had to come as a delegation, present their financial information to us, show that they were being fiscally responsible, pitch what they were going to be doing with the money that we were going to be giving them. So I personally feel that they should come as a delegation and do what all the other ones had to do.
I just have to comment on two statements you made, Councillor Tripp. With all due respect, we can't make a statement that they did not have meetings. That's not confirmed yet, unless you have
Yeah.
real proof.
Oh,
that-
Yeah, it's on
They
tape.
told us that the reason why they weren't able to get this budget in when it was supposed to be in was because they weren't able to get their members together to have a
When
meeting.
did you hear that?
That was in the fall.
When they,
Absolutely. That was what
anyway.
we were told.
No, that I can't agree upon. But anyway, no, we're not going to have any more discussion on this.
I haven't spoken to this new motion. We
Oh,
have a new
you're
motion on
speaking
the
to that
table.
one. Okay, go ahead.
I actually had a question for Councillor Thompson. I can't find it here, but I thought somewhere in the notes it asked, or it said that they would be reducing their quorum requirements to 3 people so that they were, I couldn't find that. So if you could just verify and speak to that. Also, with not being able to get the quorum together, that was why they couldn't have the meetings. There were car accidents on the highway that blocked their members from getting in. It was presented and it can be reviewed on this tape if anybody so chooses. So that's why I'm saying there's no way to have a budget approved if they didn't have a meeting. They already stated that they hadn't. So then to say now that they've done it by email, well, they could have prepared it for September then.
Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
thank you. As I said in my report, both the organizations to which are EAs, the Phoenix Foundation and the Boundary Country Regional Chamber of Commerce have had issues in establishing quorum. With respect to the chamber, at their general meeting today, it was brought forward to amend the bylaws to reflect that quorum of the board be 3 members, which again agrees with the BC Chambers and the Canadian Chambers regulations and whatever. And that if there wasn't unanimous consent, that it would be done again through a proxy vote by email. And that was approved by the membership. So hopefully in future, that shouldn't be an issue. They have members coming from Beaverdale, Greenwood, Christina Lake, and in winter conditions and in other conditions, Jim Nathor said he came to one of the meetings and he drove because of an accident. He took the Brown Creek Road in the winter, which would not be a pleasant drive. So I mean, they do try, and as a result, this resolution was endorsed by the membership, and there was definitely quorum there, so that wasn't an issue, and they're going to proceed in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for that input. And being the liaison, I will take that as face value. Okay, so now we have a motion on the table regarding the deferment. Are we to have them present, I believe?
To have them.
Yeah. So, you want to call the question?
Sure, I just want to.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hammond.
I don't think that if they came back and did another presentation, this will be their third one, that it's going to satisfy some of the council members and they're going to vote against it anyway.
Yeah.
I'd be prepared to vote on it the way it sits right now. I understand what's going on. I understand their financial statements. I know what's going on with their internal workings and how things are coming along and how they're turning things around and improving things. And I think they need to be given that opportunity, because without that funding, there will cease to be a Chamber of Commerce, and I don't want to see that happen. I think that I'm totally in favor of funding them for this budget, and it's late in coming. They're dependent on this funding, and I don't think bringing them back for another presentation is going to change several council members' votes either way. So I think it would be a waste of their time.
Okay, so we've already called the question on the receipt for information, so now we're calling the question on having them come back to present in front of council. So all those in favor of them coming back? All those opposed?
I can vote against
The
mine.
motion is defeated. All right, thank
You
you.
convinced me.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we have a liaison. Moving on to item 11A, bylaws. Bylaws 1606-A6 to rezone 7357 10th Street from R1 to R3.
Sorry.
Mr. Leonard, I need to recuse myself from this because I live just down the street from this, and I recuse myself from all the other discussions.
Okay, thank you. Fill out a form.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Not a
I'll
problem.
have to do that.
Okay, as I was saying, to rezone it from R1 to R3A Development Engineering Services. The recommendation is that council gives final reading of the zoning bylaw amendment number 1606-A6. Mover, please. Councillor Krog, Councillor Thompson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Call Councillor Tripp back. Got her to cap the pen.
Yeah.
But you didn't even have time to take your pen out.
No.
There you go. All right, moving on to item 11B. Bylaw 1958 to amend the fees and charges from our Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation is that council gives final reading to the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 1958-A3 2018. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Krog. Discussion. Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I sent out an email on this one, and I have voted against it previously because I'm having a hard time seeing how our sewer rates are only increasing by 3% as is presented with this item. When I do the math, I get more like 8.5%, and that doesn't go with our policy 808, which says that we will only increase fees by 2% plus the rate of inflation. So if I could have that explained.
To our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe what I actually stated was that it was a 3% increase in revenue over the 2017 budget, but the fees were not increased since 2016. So there's a bit of a catch-up there.
But you
So
were
the actual revenues that are estimated to be raised through this increase is 3% on top of this 2017 budget. And so in reality, it's about 6% over actuals, 2017 actuals, because we never had that increase in 2016. So it's 3% and then 3%.
So are we able to do that to piggyback? Because that's in effect what we're doing. Doubling it.
That's right.
Well, yes, but we didn't have an increase in 2017.
Yeah, I understand that. Councillor Thompson.
So as I I'm hearing our CFO correctly, we need to generate X number of dollars in user fees to balance the budget. There was no increase in 2016. There was an increase in 2017? No?
No. There was none in 2017, correct?
Okay.
There wasn't, the last increase was in 2016.
Okay, so in 2017, there was no increase. In order to achieve the revenues required to finance the budget, required the increase as presented. But the overall budget itself is increased the 3%. Have I confused things even more?
We'll work with the spoils.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Well,
Ms. Rose.
just to explain it easily, I hope, is that because we didn't have an increase in 2017, we're gonna have to increase more.
Yeah, playing catch up. in other words.
Yeah, we're playing catch up.
And can we do that legislatively, or are we allowed to?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. Okay, I don't want the words in your mouth. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hammond.
But it is only increased by 3%, is that correct? Because it says that it's adjusted to meet 3% increase in revenue over the 2017 budget. So even though we didn't have an increase last year, we're still technically only going to be a 3% increase over 2016 as well, correct?
Overall,
Overall,
the whole budget.
3%.
But not the rates.
No,
Go ahead.
our actual revenues for 2017 will be coming in lower because we never had that increase. So now we're playing catch up
By 3%.
So
to
you're going,
3% over the 2017 budget.
and then another 3%.
Yeah, so it's essentially 6, a little bit
6%,
over
yeah.
6, you know.
Councillor Butler.
I just want to make it simple. Last year, my sewer rates, I paid $78 every 2 months. This year, it's going up to 85. So it's a simple math equation, and it's quite a bit more than 3%.
It's about 5%.
It's more than that.
In any event. Okay. Councillor Tripp.
Yeah, I just will, and for the same reason, I won't be voting for this, because I did bring this issue forward at the last time we discussed it. And I just don't feel that, I think it would be fine if we were doing the 3.5%, but I'm not comfortable with playing the catch-up thing. I think if we missed a year, well, that was maybe too bad, but, residents should be able to know that things are going to be steady and not having excessive jumps. So I won't be voting for this as well.
Go ahead.
This is why I'm trying to vote against other things that are coming forward for service agreements, because we do need to cut costs in some areas, and I would rather see the sewer budget supplemented from general revenue or from the electrical, because we can switch within accounts. Because our electrical department, the extra money we make, we transfer that into different accounts. So we can, and we have in the past, covered those other accounts by using the surplus we get through electrical. Or, if we cut back on our capital projects, save some money there and use that to supplement. But as Councillor Tripp said, I don't want customers to have an erratic jump. That's why we have the policy 808, is to ensure that increases are just a steady rise and nothing too dramatic.
Councillor Thompson.
I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. However, there is a cost to funding the utility, and the electrical, part of the electrical surplus, I think was 10%, used to be 10%, went to assist general revenue. In my 30-plus years experience with, it's 37 years, with the city, I've never ever seen the utilities water and sewer being offset through taxation or electrical rates. So I think I would rather see the utility and the customers to know that we don't willy-nilly want to raise rates. I mean, we stifled staff last year on any rate increases that were being proposed. And I always said, when I was sitting in the chair that our CFO said, the day's going to come when you have to pay Rob Peter to pay Paul. And I don't want to be doing that. I want the utilities to pay for themselves, and there's a cost to do that if we want to run the facilities and the utilities to the very best that our customers should, and users have come to expect. And so if that requires an additional lift, it's what, $3.50 a month or something in the rate per month, $7, whatever, in a 2-month period. That doesn't even buy a coffee at Tim Hortons, I don't think. So, you know, to me, it's how you look at stuff. And I don't have an issue with the increase.
I believe customers still would like services offered to them that the city does offer. And if this has happened, that last year there was no increase, then the constituents got a break last year. But if there's a shortfall in the resources with the city, it has to be made up somewhere. So unfortunately, got a break last year, so this year we have to make up for it. That's my view. Councillor Hammond, and then Councillor Butler, and then I'm going to end this.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is, because we didn't increase it last year, is because we were balanced, or did we actually run it as a deficit, that service last year, and subsidize it from somewhere else? And if it's truly a necessity to meet the needs to continue that service without running a deficit, then I can see it. But I'd still like to see it so that it says that it's going to be an increase of 5% or 6%, not an increase of 3% if it's not actually 3%, so that people know exactly what it is. I know it's $3.50 a month. It doesn't. I mean, it's less than a cup of coffee. But I just want to know if we were able to get away without a 3% increase last year. Were we balanced on the operations of that service?
Well, the main reason that there was no increase last year was because of the water rates, and the water and sewer rates are tied together. And we were waiting until the results of that water rates analysis was done, and it wasn't completed until the end of the year. So that's why we didn't put through a bylaw to increase the rates last year. It all pretty much balances out. I mean, if we didn't have this increase through the utilities, we'd probably have to make up for it through a tax increase. So the city needs to raise a certain amount of revenue through utilities, through taxation. The actual asset management, there is an asset management deficit, and that deficit is greatest in the sewer and water utilities. By raising these rates, we can then allocate those funds towards infrastructure renewal in those utilities and not have to rely so much on taxation or even on the electrical utility to make up that difference.
Councillor Butler.
So I just looked up our asset management policy here, and I'm actually kind of surprised what it says. Policy statement 1.3. Beginning in 2017, the city's utility rates will increase consistently over time between 3 and 4% year to year, or balanced with additional revenues that have not yet been allocated or identified to fund the asset management capital reserves. So additional revenues that haven't been allocated is an option for subsidizing the utility according to Asset Management Policy 808. The other thing I wanted to mention is we receive statistics from Community Futures on a lot of different things in our area to do.
2000.
That's not the survey that was done. The census. Thank you. Yeah, and the statistics that came out of that showed that the income levels in our area are substantially lower than they are in a lot of areas, especially in the Okanagan. We have a lot of seniors that are on fixed income, and we've got a lot of people here from Whispers tonight that can testify that $7 to some people is a lot of money, when I don't think that their pension checks are going up a lot. We've done big tax increases in the last couple of years, and that's hit people hard. And another $7 here, and I said this last year, another $7 there. You're putting more people out on the streets that these guys are dealing with. So it is a big deal raising it. That's why we have a policy to only raise it 3 or 4% per year, and to offset it with revenues that have not yet been allocated.
The only comment to that, Councillor Butler, with all due respect, is if you read your first onslaught, which you did, you stated yourself where the policy reads from year to year, and any shortfalls then come from other allocated funds. But there was no shortfall insofar as only because a year has been omitted. So we didn't really follow the policy going year to year. A year was omitted, so we can't be expected to take from other allocated funds to supplement, because we didn't follow the policy in the first place because it wasn't year to year.
You can go however you want.
I know that seems like a very coy answer, but it is a fact. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we were, as a council, to reduce the amount of the increase, then the budget is going to have to be reduced by an amount accordingly, and that would probably, I'm thinking, would probably be any transfers into the capital asset. And so down the road, when there is an incident that requires substantial capital expenditure and we have no money in that fund, then we end up having to borrow. And that costs interest, and that has to be levied against the users, and that might require a substantial increase. And so I appreciate what your concerns are. I am going to support this resolution because I don't want to see us going. I spent too many years going down that road where, no, we can't do this, no, we can't do that. It's an election year. People might not like me because I voted for an increase, or maybe they'll really like me because I didn't. I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to do what's best for our city as a whole. And in my opinion, supporting this resolution does that.
I'm going to call the question now. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Councillor Butler and Councillor Tripp. Motion's carried. Moving on to 11C. Bylaw 1973-A1 to amend water regulations, from our Chief Financial Officer again. The recommendation is council gives final reading to the Water Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 1973-A3 2018. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tripp. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Moving on to 1011D. My apologies. Bylaw 1974 to amend sewer regulations, again from our Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation is council gives final reading to the Sewer Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 1974-A2 2018. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson. I have a second. Councillor Butler. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Okay, moving on to our late items, which is 12A. Subject matter is the property on 7217 Riverside Drive. The subject matter is in regards to a release out of in-camera of a resolution of council that reads as follows. That council authorize staff to secure the services of a qualified demolition contractor to perform the complete removal and cleanup of the property at the earliest opportunity following the tenants vacating the premise in accordance with the City of Grand Forks Contracting Authority and Purchasing Policy number 802A-1. And we don't need a motion on that, that's just a statement that we're releasing out. Moving on, we now go to questions from the public and the media. Oh, sorry.
I thought it was a late item.
Yeah, we just did it. It was just a release.
Yeah, they're released, but I thought there was going to be another late item with conversations.
Never mind. Never mind. No conversation.
Now you've got me curious.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't stated at the beginning, so unfortunately that's it.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I thought that's, we were gonna combine.
Okay, now we're gonna have questions.
To do with the property.
No, I don't think there's any unless we have something that. We're gonna deal questions from the public and the media, and again, may I please respectfully ask everyone to focus on the subject matter of tonight's agenda.
Yes,
Lady in the second row.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Kate Sanders for that. So I'm just a little confused here because item 4A is the delegation report presentation. Was there a report made to council, and if so, will that be made available?
That was it for budget meetings today.
She's talking about
No,
from
that's
whispers.
the compliance. The compliance
4A
letter.
today, yes.
Yeah, the compliance
That's what I
letter.
thought we
Yeah.
were dealing with as a late item.
Is there some letter of compliance or some other documentation?
I think it's fine to send that on. Did you
Okay,
guys
where's
report?
CEO?
I mean, I can request it from Whispers, but I was just wondering if council.
Council just requested that there was compliance, and I believe that the organizations did send the information directly to council members as well as staff who witnessed the compliance. This came in, of course, late before the agendas, or like after the agendas were done. So it's not a requirement that information is
Released.
part of the agenda. It's just that it was the requirements of council, and staff reviewed it and decided that everything was within compliance as the information that was provided.
Councilor Crowe?
Yeah, I just, for some reason, I was under the impression that we were actually gonna mention that. It makes sense what CAO's talking about, staff making sure, and I think that we're all comfortable with that, but I thought we were going to address it. Other
Well-
than, hey, you're in compliance.
Yeah, well, the resolution reads that we received the information, and obviously
Yeah.
there was no discussion because we
Okay.
accepted it as per staff accepted it, so there was no contradictions to the compliance.
Okay.
But, if you want to have a discussion.
No, I just wanted that they would be informed.
Okay, so I'm not aware. Again,
It's a
rebuttal?
follow-up, if I may, yes. Thank you, Your Worship, again. So then, my question is the recommendation on the agenda tonight says that they receive the information and determines if the organizations have met the requirements. So am I to understand that that's a decision council and staff have already come to? Okay, so there will be no discussion tonight about whether or not they're in compliance.
I don't believe there's any need for it because council has accepted.
I think the discussion would be if they were not.
Yeah, if they were not in compliance, then there
Okay.
would have been a discussion because that would have been pointed out. Go
So,
ahead.
was that a determination that staff made and council accepted the staff recommendation? Okay, thank you.
Well, all of council received documentation for their,
And it's staff's professional opinion that that documentation is sufficient?
well, it fulfilled all the
Fulfilled the
requirements because the prerequisites were there and they were met.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Gentleman in the back.
Les Johnson, GFTV. Just congratulations on saying it's okay for Bear Safe to remind people of what is needed, because human nature being, I wish you would do more or more things would happen around here to remind people about the way things should be, not just with bears, garbage, etc., but little things like driving your bicycle on the right side of the road. I see parents teaching their kids to drive it on the wrong side of the road. All kinds of little things that people just keep forgetting. That's why we do that. You have a new generation coming up, you have people moving into town, and people just plain don't get it and forget. But thank you. That's it.
Right.
Lady in the front row.
Thank you. Melissa Scholgo with Whispers of Hope. I just wanted to clarify, you guys had mentioned the property slate for destruction was 7217. I just wanted to confirm that it was actually 7212, the current
My
location of
apologies.
Whispers of
It is that building.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Not the neighbors have.
Yeah, exactly.
The first time you took down the building.
I assume so, but I just wanted to clarify.
Maybe it is a
Thank you.
12. It looks like a 7.
Okay.
Sorry, can't read my own writing. Any other questions? Hearing none, may I have a,
Mine got answered.
Oh,
Thank you.
there's no other, okay, Councillor Crock? Do you want? Oh, no.
No, sorry, I was doing the motion if nobody has questions.
Motion to adjourn? Councillor Crock. All those in favor? This meeting's adjourned.